Dear viewers, today we are going to discuss Middle English literature. Middle English literature is dominated by medieval verse romance. It marks a significant change in taste and sensibility when it is judged against the heroic poetry. Heroic poetry is more realistic in treatment and deals with the exploits of heroes. On the other hand, romance is escapist and indulges in the marvelous without any serious purpose. In romance, characters fight on principle, as it were, or as a matter of fashion. So, fighting in romance looks like a sport rather than a necessity. The transition between heroic poetry and medieval romance can be seen in French Chansons de Geste, a collection of short heroic poems. The poems included in this collection are early heroic romances as well as late heroic poems. Still, they are more close to romance because of their idealized characters and imaginative situations. And this transitional kind of poetry flourished in France from 9th to the 12th centuries. As English literature was in the French cultural orbit, the dominant trends of French literature manifested themselves in English literature. The heroic tales of action were mostly produced in northern France, but from the south, especially from Provence, new elements of sentiment and courtly love passed into medieval romance. The preponderance of Provencal literature was an offshoot of the rise of Provençal language, and the rise of Provençal language was the result of the breakdown of Latin under the influence of Anglo-Saxon language. Provence had already developed the lyrical poetry of Troubadours. The Troubadours were wandering minstrels who went around entertaining in the halls of great houses. Influenced by the southern love lyric, northern poetry also reflected the tradition of courtly love. According to this tradition, loyalty to one's queen was as important as loyalty to one's king. So both love and war were linked with service. The devoted knight overcomes tremendous obstacles by virtue of the strictness of his honor and the strength of passion. Honor is related to the service of his lord, and passion is related to his secret love for the lord's wife. This love is not to be mixed with conjugal love, because conjugal love bears the stamp of religion and courtly love thrives on adulterous passion. The idea of courtly love affected the tone of medieval romance and had an incalculable effect on all subsequent love literatures. As regards the subject matter of medieval romance, it was divided by a 12th century troubadour, Jean Bodel, into three categories. They are the matter of France, the matter of Britain, and the matter of Rome the Great. The matter of France deals with the activities of Charlemagne and his knights. Its tone bears the traces of heroic poetry, and its climactic point is the tale called Chanson de Roland. It is the desperate story of the courageous fight against hopeless odds, and it ends with the death of the protagonist. As the cycle grew, the interest shifted from Charlemagne to his companions. Earlier romances of the matter of France were inspired by religious zeal. They were mostly encouraged or produced by the monks seeking patronage. The matter of Britain is concerned with the Arthurian stories, which had their genesis in the works of Geoffrey of Monmouth and Learmonth. Geoffrey gives us the picture of the Anglo-Saxon invasions. These invasions are seen through the eyes of retreating Britons. Here we get the first full-dress story of the exploits of King Arthur. Arthur is a great hero rather than a great symbolic figure in the background, as he was later to become. The Arthurian romances bore greater affinity to French Arthurian tales. It was from the Breton legends rather than from the English chroniclers that most of the later Arthurian romances seem to have sprung. These romances are far removed in tone from the Chanson de Roland. They have lost the old heroic note completely and treat the notion of courtly love in an elaborate manner. The matter of Rome the Great represented another great popular kind of subject matter. The ancient classical world as seen through medieval eyes. This was a curiously medievalized ancient world derived from sources other than classical culture. The French romances dealing with the matter of Britain and the matter of Rome the Great combined adventure and sentiment. The latter sprang from the idea of courtly love, which left a lasting impression on European sensibility. Hitherto, love between the sexes was regarded simply as physical passion, but the poetry of Troubadours transformed the idea of love completely. Now, love is like a service like that of a slave to his master. The knight serves the lady of his choice and suffers any and every kind of indignity for her sake, without ever swerving in his allegiance towards her. He adores her to the point of exaltation and equates her with Virgin Mary, who is an embodiment of perfect maidenhood. This type of love was bound to be extramarital, however pure it might appear. This is not the relation between husband and wife, because a husband cannot be a lover of his own wife. Furthermore, in feudal times, marriage was bound up with inheritance and transmission of property, and so the questions of love could not be allowed to enter it. The courtly lover did not even wish to marry his lady, because the marriage would spoil everything. He was content with the idea that he was a high-placed feudal servant to his lord's wife, and if the lord was away at the crusade, there was all the more scope for the consummation of his love. Such romances were produced in England as well as in France. French was the language of the English upper class from the Norman conquest until the 14th century, and during this period the polite literature of England was French, either imported or domestically produced. Later, the English translators of the French romances adapted them to cater to the needs of a much less sophisticated audience. That is why the English version of the French romance was shorter and cruder, devoid of sentiment. In the second part of this lecture, we shall be dealing with some of the most important romances belonging to the established categories. Thank you very much.